what lessons are learned or to be learned after the election? The fact that the opposition did not win those elections.
First of all, of course, the elections occur in a climate. So the climate in general, in the sense of rule of law, equality, justice, and a just competition between the political parties. So the climate is important in Turkey. After the change of the political system in 2017 from the parliamentary system to a very special case of presidential system, not presidential system. In fact, before the parliamentary system itself was not pure parliamentary system. So from a very deviated or fake parliamentary system, we were transformed to a fake presidential system. And according to this presidential system, the power is in the hands of president himself. It is not like American way of presidential system or other presidential system where there is a clear separation of power. In Turkey, under this constitution and the experience in last 5 years showed a lesson that the power has been accumulated in the presidential palace. So the judicial system is under president's control, while in other real presidential system, judicial system is there to check and balance the executive power of president. Similarly, legislative power of the parliament is under the control of the president because of the majority of the parliament was in the hand of the government party. So with this, we had a very polarized political climate in Turkey. In fact, the opposition, when we formed six-party alliance, nation alliance, the main objective of this alliance was to try to prevent this polarization and try to establish an inclusive political atmosphere and an inclusive political alliance. In Turkish modern history of 200 years, there were basically three main trends. One is conservative trend based on the traditional values of Islamic tradition as well. The second one is nationalistic trend, which is a composition of these traditional values with the modern nationalistic tendency approaches. And the third is secular leftist trend. With these five other leaders, what I try to achieve, and together all of us, what we try to achieve is to bring these political trends around a table and try to form a base for a national reconciliation of 200 years polarized atmosphere. So it was not just an election alliance. While in this sense, the government and President Erdogan, had another coalition. Similar transfer there. The difference was the autocratic tendencies of tradition of conservative, nationalistic, and leftist secular trend against the freedom-oriented or liberty-oriented conservative, nationalist, and secular leftist trend. These two has competed. Those who were from the same tradition, like myself and Erdogan, the difference was he was basically trying to defend conservatism or traditional values based on an autocratic approach. I have been defending, when I was chairman of AK Party, and today, I have been defending a freedom-oriented conservatism, liberty, in the sense of dignity of human dignity, respect to individual rights. Not just state, but citizens are important. Public order is important, not state order. While Erdogan was raising trying to create a more authoritarian climate, referring to Islamic values, the same values, but the interpretation was different. Same for nationalistic approaches. Madame Akşener tried to formulate a more democratic nationalism, democratic conservatism, from our perspective. And Bahçeli was a typical exclusivist autocratic nationalism. Kılıçdaroğlu was defending a more inclusive democratic secularism, while Perinçek or many other political groups supporting Erdogan, they were defending autocratic secularism. So the difference was there. The lesson what we learned during this formation, although opposition lost the election, in the sense of as a result, but at the same time, opposition has shown with this practice that all these different political traditions came together on a democratic basis. This is very important achievement.
Would you, now the elections are over, like there is this sense, at least from an observer based in London or anywhere, that there was an opportunity, a golden opportunity for the opposition to win.
Yes.
And this opportunity being missed. Why was it missed? Was it missed because Mr. Erdogan succeeded to twist, to make the whole election pro-Erdogan or against Erdogan, or because actually the six parties table coalition failed to present a charismatic leader?
Both. To be frank, therefore I said political climate. The climate election occurred was not a fair climate. On one side, therefore, I said there was an authoritarian government power controlling everything, controlling 80-90% of the media, where it was impossible for us to talk. For example, I am a former prime minister, you are a journalist. If you were if you were working on TRT, official TV, for you as a journalist, it would have been interesting to get my views regarding election or any interview. For last 7 years, TRT did not show even my face to the people. During the election campaign, my voice was not heard by the people through TRT, which is the most widespread, while every day, hours and hours, Erdogan, Bahçeli, Perinçek and others, they were talking. So this is national TV company. It belongs to us, to the nation, because we are paying our tax to pay the salaries of TRT. But on TRT, typical Middle Eastern or other regimes, there is no voice of opposition. This is not democracy. This is not a fair election. Similarly, before, when I said fake parliamentary system, it was much more democratic than today. Why? Minister of Interior Affairs, Minister of Justice, Minister of Transportation, they were resigning 3 months or 2 or 3 months before the election in order to have a very fair competition atmosphere. In 2015, I ran 2 elections as Prime Minister of Turkey. My Minister of Interior Affairs, Home Affairs, my Minister of Justice, my Minister of Transportation resigned 2 or 3 months before the election because these 3 ministries were strategically important ministries for a fair election. But now, the most radical ministers trying to impose, to vote for Erdogan and People's Alliance, they were Minister of Justice and Minister of Interior Affairs. So this is one of the reasons why for this failure. The second, I am not only blaming on them. On our side, it would have been more result-oriented if we had present ourselves. We have produced several documents, but these were very integrated systematic documents. These should have been submitted to the people through a much more effective communication means. We were not able to do this. But in order to do this, you have to have freedom of press. There is no freedom of press in this sense. This is basically the differences. And the most important issue in until the 2 weeks before the election, opposition was advancing, but the psychology of fear created by the government and by President Erdogan, that if opposition wins, there will be a threat of terror. This was provocated by certain manipulated, manufactured videos. They were manufactured. Erdogan himself said that this is a manufactured, a fake video. But these had affected the psychology of the people, and also a fear that as if the religious values, religious symbols like headscarf and freedom of religion would be negatively affected if opposition wins. In fact, out of these 6 parties, 5 of them were conservative parties, and nobody even could create any threat to freedom of religion. And there were several documents we guaranteed to people that nobody can touch the headscarf, nobody can do anything against freedom of religion. But the monopoly of propaganda by the government prevented our voice to be heard by the people.
You said normally, like the government, even you when you were Prime Minister, you changed, or like the Minister of Home Affairs, Justice, they resigned before election. But now what we see is that actually Mr. Erdogan changed those ministers after the election. Right?
After the election, yes.
So what is your reading of the measures that been taken by Erdogan after the election?
Constitutional requirement to change the ministers of Home Affairs and Justice and Transportation, and not to appoint any political figure. They would have been, they were supposed to be neutral, not any member of any political party. After the election, Erdogan made some changes in the cabinet.
Why did he make those
because
changes?
he realized there are some reasons. You know, the former cabinet before the election, they were basically a cabinet composed of different factors. Like some were friends of son-in-law Berat Albayrak. Some were there because of Bahçeli's insistence, like Süleyman Soylu. So it was a much more. In fact, there were not many members of cabinet who worked before during the good years of AK Party, and they were not. They didn't have any success story, because that cabinet was formed to support Berat Albayrak as the new potential president after Erdogan.
You think so?
Yeah, at that time, 2018. But now, Erdogan has realized that this type of choices are not valid anymore. So they try to appoint some ministers who had some respect because of their actions before. For example, the Vice President Cevdet Yılmaz was Deputy Prime Minister, my Deputy Prime Minister in 2015. Similarly, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Hakan Fidan, worked with me for many years, like Minister of Defense, Yaşar Güler, they work with me as well.
Chief of Staff.
Yes, Minister of and many others. So now he realized, one of the reasons is that we created an opposition. When I say we this time, I don't refer to 6 parties, but as future party, our party, has created an alternative, together with Saadet Party, Deva Party. So this alternative forced him to go to the origin, to the origin of AK Party of early years. Because this time in the parliament, there is no only a secular CHP opposition. We will be there, around 35 members of parliament from 3 parties. They will be there this time to make an opposition from a conservative or from the perspective of traditional political values. So he tried to form a cabinet, some sort of a limited restoration. The question is, like Mehmet Şimşek, Minister of Finance, he was my Minister of Finance in 2016. Therefore, some people said this is in fact Davutoğlu's cabinet.
Do you consider it as Davutoğlu cabinet?
No, many of my former ministers are there. But he pushed them away. After my resignation, he tried to eliminate all the political figures who had relations with, not only with me, but with this political approach of democratic conservatism, because he wanted to have monopoly of power. The difference between me and my not only President Erdogan, but my former friend Erdogan, was that we started our political fight, our political struggle for a democratic country based on human rights and traditional values, including Islamic values. For us, transparency, rule of law, human dignity, these are not only modern values, but Muslim values of Islamic civilization. We try to have a democratic, a new political culture based on a clean politics and against corruption, a democratic politics against limitations and restrictions, and a society of welfare against poverty. These were the values we created. But Erdogan, after my resignation, and because of several influences in political system, he tried to transform AK Party and also Turkish political culture to an authoritarian character. And he preferred to work with Bahçeli, ultra-nationalist, exclusivist politics, and Perinçek, who is an atheist, Marxist, a secular, the ideological champion of 28 February, what we call very radical seculars. So they made a coalition of autocratic, authoritarian secularism, let me say conservatism or Islamism or nationalism. Now, this time, when after my resignation, he tried to remove all these former elite in order to have a loyal, less experienced, more ignorant, loyal followers of him. Now he tried to make a change after the election, because during the election campaign, he realized that it is impossible to win the election with the same cadre again. Now, question mark is there. Will these people in the cabinet free to act based on the values which we defended, or will he use them like he used me or other politicians for some months, for some years, then try to eliminate them after using them? This is like Mehmet Şimşek. He kicked him out, Minister of Finance. He's a professional. He kicked him out, blaming and accusing him as a man of interest. And his former Minister of Finance, Nurettin Nebati, accused him to be British spy. Now he came back. And will he be acting based on his own professional knowledge, or will he obey Erdogan's approach? This is the question.
What do you think, Your Excellency?
After having so many experiences with Erdogan, I think he will use these people until the municipal elections. If the policies are successful, he will say this is my success. And if the policies will not be successful, then he will say these are responsible for these people, Mehmet Şimşek and others are responsible. You see, my former policies were right. And after municipal elections, if he wins, he will try to he will appoint new ministers based on loyalty, blind loyalty, rather than quality and professional career.
Mr. Dawood Oghlo, you know Mr. Erdogan very well. You were
of course,
friends, very close. You work together. What do you think? What do you think of him now? How do you describe him?
There is not just one Erdogan. Like many other political leaders, I have observed in the history. I am an academician of political history. In the history, you can see many similar cases, from idealism to Machiavellism. I have observed in my life, not only Erdogan himself, but his team, his followers today, is one of the very specific case, and a very painful, for me to say this, a very painful case from idealism to Machiavellism. He can use anything for him to stay in power. But when we worked together with him, I was proud of him because we defended the same values. Many people do not know. I am an academician. I was not in politics. Do you know why did I involve politics?
Why?
Because,
why did you involve
yes,
in politics?
I rejected 3 times to be Minister of Foreign Affairs, and 3 times to be Member of Parliament. I was Chief Advisor and Ambassador. And 2007, he offered me to be Minister of Foreign Affairs after President Gül, after Minister Gül would be president, and I said no. And we decided to, and I said I will go back to academics. Do you know when did I decide to come back? Because when there was a ban case against AK Party in 2008 March, and ban case against Erdogan, I came and I told him that now this is time, this is a war, a declaration of war against all of us and against democracy in Turkey. I am here to fight with you, to fight together against this autocratic approach. So I didn't become minister and prime minister just to have a position. I started politics, anti-politics, to support Erdogan, to defend Erdogan against autocracy, against deep states operations to ban AK Party. So therefore, what I see, this is a very special case of power corruption. Power corrupts.
One question on Erdogan. When was it the last time you met, and what did you talk?
It was 2018, March.
What did you talk about?
I gave him a 27-page report and spoke to him about the deteriorating situation in the party and in Turkey. I clearly said, even verified certain things, that the corruption is everywhere, and the values we have been defending, the Islamic values as well as modern democratic values, have been abolished. There is corruption everywhere, almost in every institution. There is nepotism, especially by him, by his family. State belongs to nation, not to one family, not to one group of people, not even to one party. State belongs to all citizens. So he should stop nepotism. He should fight against power, against corruption. And I also said that the basic values of human rights, and the basic human rights, freedom of press, freedom of thought, freedom of demonstration, and all these are being negatively affected. There is a problem of justice. I gave a long report, and also on foreign policy issues. a long report, and I tried to, I said, now it is a time of decision. Either we have to go to the direction of fighting against poverty, corruption, and restrictions for democratic values, or to go to autocracy. And I warned him not to make any coalition with Bahçeli, an ultra-nationalist, which would change the character of AK Party. Also, I warned him not to make any coalition with deep state actors of 1990s, like Perinçek, like many others. And it was, for me, the last chance for him. He preferred to be with atheistic, ultra-secularists and ultra-nationalist groups to have a full control of the system, rather than to work with his real friends like me. He preferred to be with Bahçeli instead of me, or with Perinçek instead of other leaders. This was my last meeting with him face to face. In 2019, we had a telephone call. Every Eid, I was calling him to congratulate. In 2019, Eid al-Adha, I talked to him. At that time, there was an election for municipal election in Istanbul. The first election was, was not declared as valid. So there was a decision of repeating the election. I was against this. He asked me to participate campaign for the second election. I said it was wrong to have the decision for second election, which is not fair, and I didn't accept this. So this was our last. I made some comments criticizing some of these policies in the party. But then they decided to expel me from the party with my friends, with my six of us, because of our clear position for political ethics. The basic difference between me and him, even when I was prime minister, was that I submitted a law of political ethics to the parliament, preventing politicians to use their position for economic interest. He said he will be not resigning, not signing this or endorsing this. So it was basically these are the last discussions we had with him.
So I heard today from some people that maybe there will be early election.